All right, so I have this question here from Emmanuel. And Emmanuel is saying, "Hello, Mr. Tola. Trust you're doing well. Thank you for all you do. May God continue to answer your prayers and guide you right. Amen. I am a 21-year-old boy. I think I'll say young man. I'm a 21-year-old young man in my fourth year of medical school. During COVID, I picked up interest in graphic design, flyer and brand design to be specific. I'm also learning languages like French and Arabic. My thoughts on what to do after medical school have been also heightened, especially with the match that happened recently. All these have tossed me in quite a bit of confusion as I feel like I have no direction on what to do with my life. I would really appreciate your advice. Thank you and have a great day." All right, thank you very much for that message, Emmanuel. And Emmanuel's question is a very good question. And when I read Emmanuel's question, I had to ask myself, why do we consistently have questions with people saying, "I'm currently studying engineering, but then I found fashion design. I'm currently studying accounting, but then I found out I have an interest in catering." And like Emmanuel here telling me that he's currently studying medicine. He's in his fourth year in medical school, and he found graphic design. Why does this keep coming up? And why is it seen as a problem? Why do people see it as a problem? And I had to ask myself this question because I realized that a lot of us have a mentality that needs to be corrected. And this way I want to talk about schooling versus education. Schooling versus education. You see, a lot of us are schooled. And because we are schooled, we do not get the benefit of education. Because we are schooled, we do not get the benefit of education. Schooling has been abused over the years. Schooling is meant to be structured education. But it has become so structured that now it has become caged education. It has become limiting education. It has become defining education. And this goes against everything education should be. So if I say limiting education, it doesn't make sense because education in itself is freedom. So if anything limits you, it's not educating you anymore. If anything defines you, it's not educating you anymore. Education is liberating. The problem is we have equated schooling with education, which wouldn't have been a bad thing if not for the fact that schooling has evolved into a limiting scheme. It has made us rigid and not fluid. And so we see certain things as disadvantages when actually we should be celebrating them. Like what is happening here with Emmanuel is not a disadvantage. I'll say it again, this is not a disadvantage. It is what should happen when you are properly educated. Education loosens the mind. A lot of times, modern day schooling hardens the mind. But education should loosen our mind. It loosens our minds and opens our eyes. So if you are being educated on one thing, at the end of that education on that one thing, you should know about 5 things. If you are truly being educated, if you are being educated on one thing, learning about that one thing should open you up to about 5 things, knowledge about 5 things. If you want to learn about horticulture, or let me even put it simply, let me not use a technical thing about planting flowers and stuff like that, or crops. If you want to learn about that, your education on horticulture should teach you about soil, should teach you about organisms that live in the soil, like worms and stuff like that, should teach you about decomposition, should teach you about the need for water, should teach you about sunlight. You got an education in one thing, but introduced you to about 5 things. So you see, it doesn't matter what you went to school to study. A lot of people don't understand, as long as you are educated, you are capable of more than what you went to school to study. That's why a lot of times, education, they will tell you, good education is expensive, because you're not just picking up one thing, they're equipping you with several things. That's the benefit of education. Is a buy one, get 5 free package. At least 5 free. So you see, you being a medical student and during the COVID year, picking up an interest in graphic design is not a disadvantage. It is what should happen if you're truly an educated person. If you're studying medicine for 7 years and the only thing you pick up interest in is medicine, then you are just being schooled. You are not truly being educated. Education opens doors. It should open doors, not restrict us to particular rooms. A lot of people find Leonardo da Vinci interesting. A lot of people are inspired by him. And as I said, I'm reading a book on him by Walter Isaacson. I know Leonardo da Vinci, breakthrough. He made incredible breakthrough in medicine, in art, in engineering, in architecture. And a lot of people wonder how he was able to do this. How? He also had a stint in weapon design. You understand? He was good in designing weapons and warfare strategy. So for a while, he worked with Machiavelli. He was a brilliant man, but he didn't have formal education. So he didn't go to school. But you now ask yourself, how was a man who didn't have formal education, who wasn't schooled, how was he able to be such a polarizing figure in about 5 or so industries or fields? And people always think that he did medicine for a few years, and then he went to art for a few years, and then he used some years in architecture and some years in engineering. No. They all were jumbled together. He did them at the same time. He has a jotter, I think, for lack of a better word, where he used to journal. It was like a journal in the Louvre Museum. It's in the Louvre Museum in France, I think, that has all his drawings and all his notes. Everything was jumbled. His thoughts on art, his thoughts on medicine, his thoughts on architecture, everything was jumbled. So they were not phases in his life. They all happened at the same time. And that's because as he did one thing, he learned about another thing. So as he was drawing the bird, he was thinking about the anatomy of the bird. So art led him to medicine. And as he thought of the anatomy, he was thinking of how the joints worked. And then he was looking at how the joints worked as a machine. And because of that, that led him to engineering. When he went into nature, he looked at the habitat of things. And that led him to architecture. When he looked at man, he developed something called the Vitruvian man in architecture. That was something that was a medical inspiration that allowed him to introduce it to architecture. So he said, when a man lives in a house, everything should be to his proportion. Everything should be to a man's standard proportion. So he looked at anthropometrics in architecture. He was a truly educated person. It is not an anomaly to be studying one thing and to find an interest in another thing. That is true education. That is what it should be. If you went to school to study accounting, and after 4 years of studying accounting, all you know is accounting, that's failed education. That's limiting education. You might have a certificate in accounting, but you must also develop other interests, because an educated mind is a massaged mind. So it is loosened. So it's of little wonder that during COVID, a lot of people found interests. During COVID, many people, because they left school and for the first time in their lives, for months, several months, they didn't have to do things because of grades, to satisfy a teacher, to be number one in their class. Ambition died. And then that thing that they were learning in school started to open their minds without the constraint or the pressure of ambition, of I want to get an A. Then they started to see the world clearly. And that's why you realize that during COVID, a lot of people found interests. The educated mind began to become active. It began to be active. So if you're doing graphic design now, it's okay. You are only troubled because you have been schooled. And schools build ambition. So you are learning about medicine because you want to be a doctor. That might not sound like a bad thing. However, the intention of wanting to be, I want to be, is problematic. Because the emphasis is on the being. The emphasis should never be on the being. The emphasis should be on the knowing. I want to know how to treat people medically. The emphasis should never be on the I want to be an architect. The emphasis should be on the knowing. I want to know how to build conducive spaces for people. The emphasis should never be I want to be a lawyer. I want to be an SAN, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. I want to know about the law. And I want to know how to use the law to the benefit of other people. It's the knowing, not the being. School teaches us to be and downplays knowing. That's why in school you want to be number one. You want to be best graduating student. All those things make us focus on the being rather than the knowing. The knowing is what's most important. It's the knowing that makes us see other things. The knowing is the process. It's when you focus on the process. The being is when you focus on the answers. So you see, when you look at mathematics, there's a way in which professionals grade how much you know mathematics. They don't grade it by your answers. They grade your knowledge of mathematics by how much you know the process. So even when you miss the answers, they're like, he knows the process. So you see where you are right now, Emmanuel, as a conundrum, because you want to be a doctor. So you see every other thing that comes into your life as a competition with being. So now you're confused. What am I going to be? Am I going to be a graphic designer, or am I going to be a doctor? This graphic design thing seems to be a parasite on this my ambition to be a doctor. You see it as a parasite, not as an ingredient. That's like studying horticulture and thinking your knowledge about organisms, worms in the soil, destroys your chances of being an horticulturist. But it doesn't. It enhances it. It's an ingredient. It's a spice. Salt doesn't compete with rice. It enhances the dish when you're cooking it. Those ingredients do not compete. They collaborate, they complement. So because you're cooking rice, doesn't mean tomato is the enemy. Doesn't mean water is the enemy. Yes, you say you're cooking rice. But you see, other things, they are not the enemy. They are the ingredients. They make it better. But a lot of times, because you are focused on, I want to cook rice, not make a delicious meal, you are too focused on the rice. But you've forgotten that rice on its own, in a pot, is not very palatable. Without the water, without the salt, without the pepper, without all those things that go into it. They are not there to compete. They are there to make a unique meal. So one thing I will tell you, Emmanuel, is this your knowledge and your interest in graphic design? Lean into it. Because the truth of the matter is your knowledge in medicine needs graphic design. There are a lot of medical books that are badly illustrated, bad graphic design. That might be your call. That is why you are picking up this ingredient. Everything is an ingredient. Stop trying to be and start knowing. You would realize that in your interest in knowing, you will discover new things about yourself. You will discover a new industry that might be called medical design. So lean into it. An interest is not a conscious thing. It's something that calls out to you. It's a spiritual thing. Don't struggle with spiritual things. The most concerning thing about what you've written is the fact that you said something about being, I'll try to say, my thoughts on what to do after medical school have heightened, especially with the match that happened recently. That's the most concerning statement you've made here. Because this is a comparative statement. You've looked at someone else's path and then you said, I don't think I'm doing well in my path. A lot of people might not understand this. When I read this, I didn't understand it initially too. Thank God my wife studied medicine. And so she explained it. I didn't understand what you meant by the match. You see, there's something called match day for medical students, especially in the United States, where you have people, they go through a process. So when they finish with medical school, they have the opportunity to do a postgraduate residency in a hospital, in a particular area in medicine that they desire. It's a big opportunity, but it's a very strenuous thing to get into. Very strenuous. Some people have been trying to get matched with a program in a hospital, but it hasn't happened for years. They write exams, go for lectures and things like that. Now, something interesting happened a couple of days ago where a young man in the University of Lagos studying medicine got a match while he was in the university. This is a very incredible feat, because even some people, after their house job, when they are done, find it very hard. Not talk about somebody who is still doing medical courses in university, juggling it with this great task of wanting to get a match into a residency program. But he did, and it was all over social media, at least for those who are interested in medicine. Incredible feat. Incredible. And I'm sure a lot of medical students looked at this and thought to themselves, what am I doing with my life? This is my mate. This is my mate. He has gotten this residency program in the US to be a radiologist. What am I doing with my life? So you started to compare yourself. Now, as great as an opportunity this is, it is an opportunity. For those of you that watch sports, this match day, or this thing that they call the match in the US, is very similar to the draft. So for those of you that are into basketball, there's something called the draft, where you have basketball teams look at college students, different students in colleges that have played for their college teams, and say who is playing well, and they begin to draft them into professional teams. So they get drafted in. It's a very, very pressure-filled time for college athletes, especially those playing basketball. I don't know if it happens. I think it happens with the NFL too, those that play American football. I think so. I'm not sure if it happens with hockey, but there's something called a draft. I think it happens with hockey too. So people play in colleges for their college team, and they have scouts watching them and saying, okay, this guy might be good for our team. So when you get drafted, you are very excited. It's your first professional experience. But then there's an opportunity. It's not the destination. So people that tell you don't over-celebrate the draft because it doesn't mean you will be a star. It's an opportunity to be a star. You are not yet a star. You are still a rookie. The people that have been drafted and nobody ever knew of them, they were nobodies. It is not the achievement. Because it is hard to get in, doesn't make it the win. So when we look at things like this medical match, it was hard to get in, but he hasn't won yet. And this is where schooling teaches us wrong about being, not about knowing. It is what he does with what he learns in that hospital during his residency. What he does with that, what he learns. What he does with what he learns. What he knows. That's when we will know whether this was a success story or not. It is still a work in progress. It is not yet time to celebrate. It is an incredible thing to have done, But then it's just the first step. He's on his path. Is that your path? So if that's what's motivating you, or giving you clarity about what to do, or giving you clarity about what to do in medicine, that is not a strong enough motivation. Because now you're being motivated by ambition. You must be motivated by empathy, by a need to serve. Service is the height of achievement. Not your awards, it's the service. It's the service. You are educated to serve. If you know about horticulture and never plant anything in your life, that's a failure. You never use it, that's a failure. You can have that badge, horticulturist, as much as you want, but you don't use it for the good of man. That is a failure. So I need you to know, Emmanuel, and any other person listening, that true education opens more doors. These doors are not competing. In fact, they are adding to your knowledge. You only see it as competition when you are focused on being. They are spices. Pick it up. This is how new fields are found. This is how new dishes are formed. People form different dishes by adding odd things. How did people come up with coconut rice? Someone just thought to themselves, I'm going to add coconut water into rice. And something new was formed. It's by adding the odd that we have new fields. So it might seem odd for an engineering student to have an interest in fashion. It might seem odd for a microbiology student to have an interest in animation. It might seem odd. But then this is where groundbreaking things are found. So yeah, I really feel you should celebrate this rather than be confused by this. You're 21 years old. It is not time to grind your heels in a particular place. It is time to venture out and find out how much more there is to this incredible person called Emmanuel. There's so much more to you. So much more to you. When you realize there's so much more to you, you realize it's impossible to be. It's impossible. Being now becomes a cage. Calling you one thing is limiting you. You are more than one thing. You are made for a particular service that needs particular ingredients. Lean into them and let the master use you for what he desires to. With all the spicy that he's doing to you, all the marinating that he's doing to you, so that you can be served up as a delicious, satisfying, fulfilling, leaving a good taste in your mouth meal to humanity. I hope this makes sense to you, Emmanuel, and to any other person listening. Everything you know is an addition. Every interest that is sparked up is a spiritual inclination. Don't resist it. Lean into it.